At Christmas dinner, my sister's new boyfriend sat across from me and asked what I do now. My dad chuckled, still chasing that little online hobby. My sister rolled her eyes and said, "He lives in his childhood bedroom, if that tells you anything." I didn't say a word until her boyfriend leaned in and whispered, "Wait, are you the guy behind that app?" My name's Tom. I'm 27. I've always been the quiet one in the family. Not the screw-up, not the golden child, just invisible. Growing up, that wasn't a problem. I liked tinkering with computers, building websites, taking things apart, and putting them back together. I had a small group of friends, all online. I wasn't exactly the high school quarterback, and I definitely wasn't the type of guy my sister, Lena, bragged about to her friends. But I was okay with that. I liked my world. Coding made sense. People didn't. Lena is 2 years older than me, and she's always known exactly how to be impressive. Varsity sports, student council, pre-law. The kind of kid my parents plastered on every Christmas card while I hovered blurry in the background. We grew up in a nice suburb, not rich, but well off enough that appearances mattered. Our parents were old school. Dad was a lawyer. Mom ran the kind of community charity events where everyone brought sugar cookies and judged each other silently. Our dinner table wasn't a place for open conversation. It was a place for subtle jabs and measuring each other's worth by career titles or recent achievements. Lena moved out the second she could, got into a decent law school, and married her college boyfriend, Matt. The wedding was huge. I wasn't even asked to speak. I sat in the back near the restrooms, pretending not to notice that my name was misspelled on the seating chart. They divorced 3 years later, but Lena landed on her feet, like always. She never had to start over the way most people do. When she wanted a new car, Dad co-signed. When she needed a place to live, Mom offered the guest house. And when she brought home a new boyfriend, Greg, he got a seat at Christmas dinner before I even knew his last name. Meanwhile, I stayed home after college. I didn't have a big graduation party. No one rented a venue or printed banners. I walked across the stage, got my diploma, and then quietly returned to my childhood bedroom. I'd been freelancing since junior year, building small apps and plugins for clients. After graduation, I poured everything I had into a project I'd been dreaming up for years, a productivity tool for creative freelancers like me. It wasn't flashy, but it was clean, intuitive, and solved problems I'd dealt with for years. I funded it with my own savings, line by line of code, no investors. I didn't even give it a proper name at first, just called it Notebox. But slowly, people found it. Creators talked about it. Streamers started using it. Then YouTubers. Then big-name content houses. Word spread. Quietly. I never told my family much about it. I knew better. Lena would roll her eyes. Dad would ask if it was a real business yet. They didn't understand tech unless it was on the news or IPOing. So, I let them think I was just some guy fiddling with his laptop all day, still mooching off my childhood room. In reality, I was running a company. I had 2 remote employees. I had 6-figure contracts. But I didn't share that. Because once you tell people you've made it, they want a piece. And in my family, nothing stays quiet. This Christmas felt like every other one. White lights. Classical music playing softly in the background. Ham in the oven. Mom pulling out the good plates. The ones with the gold trim, no one was allowed to use the rest of the year. Dad wore his usual sweater, green with the little stitched crest that made him look like he belonged in a law firm commercial. Lena showed up fashionably late in a designer coat that still had the tag on it and introduced Greg like he was royalty. He was tall, good-looking in a catalog kind of way, and had the confident handshake of a guy who sells something expensive. Finance, maybe. I didn't ask. I just nodded, smiled, and went back to setting the table. Dinner was uneventful at first. We went around the table saying what we were grateful for. Dad said he was thankful for a strong legal year and a stronger market. Mom said she was grateful Lena was finally moving on and finding happiness again. Lena said she was thankful Greg had been a rock through her transition, as if a second divorce was just a gentle season change. Greg said he was grateful to be included in a family with such strong roots. Then it was my turn. I opened my mouth, paused for a second, and just said, "Thankful for the people who believe in me." A silence hung in the air for a second too long. Dad chuckled under his breath. Still chasing that little online hobby. Lena smirked. He lives in his childhood bedroom, if that tells you anything. I clenched my fork. Not because the comment hurt, it didn't anymore, but because I'd heard it so many times it felt scripted. The same way you hear a song, so often it becomes background noise. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Greg, still smiling politely, turned to me. So what is it you do exactly? I looked at him. Thought about lying. Thought about saying software and leaving it vague. But before I could answer, Lena cut in. He calls himself a founder, she said, making air quotes with her fingers. He built some productivity thing. Still trying to get it off the ground. It's been like, what, for years now. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. Not anger. Embarrassment. Not for me, for them. For how eagerly they diminished what they didn't understand. Greg didn't laugh, though. He narrowed his eyes. Wait, what kind of productivity thing? I shrugged. Project management. Scheduling. Real-time collaboration. Mostly for digital creatives. Content-focused teams. We automate the boring parts. He leaned forward, eyebrows raised. What's it called? I hesitated. No box. He blinked. Wait, hold on. Are you the guy behind that app? Every fork froze. Every glass hovered midair. Lena looked between us, her smile faltering. My dad raised an eyebrow. Greg stared at me, suddenly more animated than he'd been all evening. I have clients who swear by that thing. My own team uses it. We thought it was some funded startup out of San Francisco. You built that? I nodded slowly, keeping my face blank. Yeah, I built it. The silence that followed wasn't the polite kind. It was the kind that rearranged the room. The kind that shifted the weight of the conversation entirely. And in that pause, just for a second, I saw something flicker in Lena's expression. A crack in the usual disdain. Something between disbelief and something uglier. Resentment. But I didn't say another word. I didn't explain. I didn't gloat. I just picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip, letting the weight of my silence do what years of arguing never could. And that's when everything started to change. The air didn't quite go back to normal after Greg recognized my app. Something invisible shifted across the table like a cold breeze that only I could feel. Everyone picked up their forks, resumed chewing, but the tone had changed. My dad stayed quiet, his eyes now flickering to me every so often with a tight-lipped expression that wasn't quite curiosity and wasn't quite irritation either. Mom offered Lena more gravy twice in 5 minutes, which she declined with that tight, fake smile she always wore when she was thinking too fast. I sat there, sipping my wine, pretending not to notice the change. But I did. Every second of it. What I didn't expect was what came next. Over the next week, my phone buzzed more than usual. Not with users or support requests, those I'd gotten good at filtering, but with family group texts. Suddenly, my mom wanted to check in more often. My dad asked if I could help his friend with a website. Lena, of all people, texted me a selfie of her and Greg at some restaurant with the message, "Dinner with the No Box Fan Club." I didn't respond. See, I've spent most of my life trying not to be noticed. It's a habit you develop when the alternative is being misunderstood or mocked. But after Christmas, it felt like I'd been dragged into the spotlight in a family that didn't know how to handle it without turning it into a competition. At first, it was subtle. My mom asking me, if I wanted to come with her and Lena to the farmer's market just to get out of the house. My dad casually asking what kind of income range a business like yours might see. Lena calling me one evening to say she was thinking about pivoting to tech law, and maybe I had some insights. I played it cool. I kept my answers vague. But something about Lena's sudden interest in startups made my stomach twist. The real crack came one weekend in February. My parents were hosting a little get-together for Dad's birthday. Nothing big, just a few family friends, some catered food, wine that costs more than my monthly utilities. I wasn't going to go, but Mom guilted me into it, saying it would mean a lot to Dad. So I showed up. Clean shirt, bottle of scotch, polite smile. Played the part. The evening dragged. I spent most of it making small talk with people who barely remembered me. They all asked the same questions, still living at home. What exactly do you do? Is that like real money or internet money? It was fine. I've had worse. Then Greg showed up. He and Lena were late, of course, but when they entered, people turned. Not just because Lena wore something flashy, she always did, but because Greg had something new on his wrist, a no-box smartwatch integration. He raised his arm as he greeted Dad. "This thing," he said, tapping it. "Game changer. I swear, Tom's a genius. You guys know he built it all himself, right? You'd think he'd just announced I was dating a Kardashian." Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. I was the genius. The guy with the app. My dad laughed a little too loudly, clapped me on the back like we were old pals. Mom beamed. Lena smiled too, but hers was tighter, colder. By the end of the night, I caught a moment between her and Mom in the kitchen. They didn't know I was there. I'd come in for water, paused when I heard my name. He's just lucky, Lena was saying, her voice sharp but hushed. A fluke. That's not real success. It's not even sustainable. Mom didn't reply at first. Then, with a sigh, still, it's surprising. Maybe don't dismiss it so openly, sweetie. People are starting to notice. That hit her. I heard the silence settle like a brick. And that was the first real crack. The second came a few weeks later, when Dad called me into his study. The last time I'd been in there was to borrow a stapler, and even then, I felt like I needed an invitation. This time, he called me in like he was the boss, and I was a junior analyst. He gestured to the chair. Sit, Tom. I did. He leaned forward, fingers steepled. Your mother and I have been talking. About the future. That never meant anything good. I've noticed some growth in your business, he said, each word measured like he was crafting a deposition. And I think it's time we start discussing a more formal structure. I blinked. A formal structure? A trust. Some LLC protections. Family business tax advantages. If you're willing to be open about your finances, I could advise. I'm fine, I said quickly. Dad frowned. Tom, let's be practical. You're operating under our roof. You use the house utilities. You take up space. It's not unreasonable to talk about contributions. I nodded slowly, the realization setting in like a cold draft. There it was. They weren't proud of me. They wanted a piece. Dad continued, we're not asking for much. But maybe you could formalize things, put part of the company under the family umbrella. We can help with legal. With strategy. Lena has experience negotiating contracts. I stood up. Thanks. But I've got it covered. He didn't stop me from leaving. But I could feel his stare on my back like a knife. From that point on, things got worse. Lena was no longer subtle. She started tagging me in tweets about nepotism in tech, started making digs at family dinners. Comments like, must be nice not having student loans when you never moved out, or Tom's startup is just the basement at this point. I ignored it. For weeks, I ignored it. Until the betrayal. It happened in April. I got an email from one of my oldest clients, a big name in the creator space. We'd worked together for over 2 years. Their tools were deeply integrated with Notebox. We had mutual trust, or so I thought. The email read, Hey Tom, quick question. We've been approached by someone representing Notebox Legal, says they're expanding into licensing and subscription tiers, and that we might need to rework our contract. Is this legit? I stared at the screen. Notebox Legal? I had no such team. I asked for the rep's name. They sent me a screenshot. Lena. It was Lena's name, her email address, her law firm's branding. She was using my company's name in her pitch. I felt sick. I spent the rest of the night digging. And what I found? She'd been pitching several of my clients, positioning herself as the new legal contact for Notebox, claiming I'd outsourced some of my business structuring to her. She'd even created a mock website, just a page, but enough to look real if you weren't paying close attention. And here's the kicker. Her pitch included a clause. A new licensing fee that funneled a percentage of contract value through her firm on behalf of Notebox IP compliance. I didn't sleep that night. My hands shook too much to type straight. I couldn't even think. I kept replaying every dinner, every comment, every dismissive look from her, from my parents, and now this. She wasn't just jealous. She was hijacking my work, my name, my company. I confronted her 2 days later, outside our parents' house. She had just pulled up in her sleek new BMW, bought, I'm sure, on the back of one of her alimony settlements. I stood at the end of the driveway, blocking her path. We need to talk, I said. She barely looked at me. Can it wait? I'm late for a meeting. With one of my clients? I snapped. That got her attention. She tilted her head. Excuse me. I know what you're doing. Notebox Legal. You made a whole site. You've been cold pitching my clients behind my back. She scoffed. It's business, Tom. Grow up. I took a step closer. It's fraud. That wiped the smugness off her face. For a second. Don't be dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. I was helping. You're not equipped to manage enterprise contracts. I was cleaning up your mess. You're profiting off my name. My work. You didn't even ask. She crossed her arms. Because you would have said no. And you always say no when someone tries to help. You sit up there in your little room like some misunderstood genius, acting like you're above all of us. You think because you got lucky with an app, you're special? I am special, I said quietly, because I built something, and I didn't step on my own brother to do it. She flinched at that, just a little. Then she said the words that broke me. You should be thanking me. I gave you credibility. And that was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in rage, but in clarity. She thought she owned me. They all did. And that's when I decided I was going to take it all back. Quietly, deliberately. And when I did, they'd never see it coming. But first, I had to gather proof. And I had the perfect plan. Rock bottom doesn't always feel like crashing. Sometimes it feels like standing perfectly still while everyone else moves around you. Confident, smug, certain, and all you can do is stare as everything you built slips away, one quiet betrayal at a time. After confronting Lena in the driveway, I thought the worst was over. I thought she'd back off, maybe even apologize. Instead, she doubled down. Within 2 weeks, 3 more clients reached out to confirm terms that I'd supposedly updated through my legal rep. The worst part? Lena wasn't just cold pitching them. She was modifying existing contracts, replacing contact information, and even inserting new clauses into renewal templates she got through forwarded email chains. She knew just enough about my workflows to manipulate the soft spots. She knew I worked solo. She knew I didn't have a legal team or infrastructure, and she used that to twist the knife. I sent out a formal notice to every client, clarifying that Lena did not, and had never, represented NoBox in any capacity. I sent cease and desist letters. I updated every contract with stricter language. But the damage was already done. One of my biggest partners, a media agency that represented half a dozen influencer teams, paused their subscription indefinitely. Just until this legal thing is sorted, they said. Another client quietly migrated to a competitor. They never said it was because of Lena, but the timing lined up too perfectly to ignore. I didn't eat for 2 days. I lay in bed, blinds closed, my laptop open but untouched. The blue light pulsed against my face while unread emails piled up. I ignored calls, ignored the thudding sound of Dad knocking on my door, asking if I was sick or just sulking. I ignored Lena's one-line text that said, "Let me know when you're done with your tantrum." For the first time in years, I wondered if they were right. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe I was just a guy in his childhood bedroom with a lucky app. Maybe I should have handed over part of it when Dad asked, when Lena offered her help. Maybe I was too stubborn, too naive. One night, I finally got up and opened my analytics dashboard. Usage was dropping, slowly but steadily. Not a crash, but a leak. The kind that sinks ships over time if you don't patch it. My hand hovered over the keyboard, and then I heard something. Outside. Voices. I walked to the window and looked down. Lena was standing in the driveway, talking to Greg, laughing. He handed her something, a stack of papers, and she flipped through them while sipping a latte. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the tone. They weren't worried. They weren't even cautious. They were confident. I realized then, they didn't think I could fight back. They thought I was done, that I'd give up, disappear, lick my wounds in silence while they cashed in. That was the moment everything clicked. I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to rebuild. And this time, no one would get near it. I started the next day. I shut down all new signups to NoBox. Posted a short public message, temporarily pausing new accounts while we prepare for a major upgrade. Existing users will not be affected. It bought me breathing room. Stopped the leak. Then I started combing through everything. Contracts, email logs, access permissions. I found every vulnerability Lena had exploited and quietly began sealing them off. I hired a real lawyer, not Dad's golf buddy, but a no-nonsense IP specialist from out of state. She didn't ask questions. She got to work. Next, I messaged 2 former freelancers I'd worked with in the past, one a designer, the other a back-end engineer. I offered short-term contracts. NDA locked. High pay. They signed in 24 hours. I gave them one task. Help me build the next version of NoBox. Not just a patch. Not just a fresh coat of paint. A complete overhaul. Faster, leaner, more secure. New name. New branding. New domain. A platform rebuilt from the ground up with one goal. Cut out every crack that someone like Lena could ever slide into again. I worked 16-hour days. Ate at my desk. Slept in short bursts. My body ached. My eyes burned. But for the first time in months, I felt alive. And I didn't tell anyone, not even my clients, especially not my family. I moved out quietly in May, rented a tiny studio apartment across town. Still small, still modest, but mine. I didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, just packed my things and left while everyone was out for the weekend. When Mom called to ask where I was, I said I needed space. When Dad said I was being immature, I didn't respond. And when Lena texted, running away again, I blocked her number. It felt petty at first, but it was necessary. Space wasn't about hiding. It was about clearing the fog, the constant noise, the judgment, the undermining. Once it was quiet, I could finally think again. And the more I worked, the more I realized something. No box was never supposed to be a product for everyone. It was meant for creators, for underdogs, for the people who get dismissed, overlooked, underestimated, just like me. I started reaching out directly to the types of users I believed in. Indie game developers, small YouTube teams, art collectives, musicians. I offered them early access to the new platform, free onboarding, personalized support. They loved it. Word spread. Quietly. One morning, while checking my inbox, I found something strange. An email from Greg. Just one line. Hey, would love to talk if you've got time. No context. No subject. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. A week later, I got another email. This one from Lena's old firm. Apparently, she was no longer affiliated. No details given. Just a vague notification that she was no longer representing clients under the Notebox legal brand. I smiled. I didn't respond. Instead, I kept building. The new platform launched in July under a new name, Signalbox. Same soul, new skin. By the end of the first week, over 3,000 users had migrated. By the end of the month, we crossed 10,000. I'd never seen growth like this. Not even during Notebox's peak. Investors started calling. I ignored most of them. I didn't want partners. I didn't want a board. I wanted control. That's what I'd almost lost. And I'd be damned if I ever gave it up again. My lawyer helped me lock it all down. Every name, every patent, every trademark. This time, there were no cracks. By August, I hired full-time staff, built a team, rented a small co-working space, even started mentoring a few young developers who reminded me of, well, me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Because I knew who I was now. I wasn't just the quiet one. I wasn't just the guy in the childhood bedroom. I was the builder, the survivor. And I had one last thing to do. Because as much as I tried to move on, there was still a storm waiting back home. One more chapter that hadn't closed. One final betrayal to confront. And I knew exactly when I'd do it. Christmas was coming again. And this time, I had a seat at the table. I started laying the groundwork for what I now call the setup, not with vengeance in my heart, but with clarity in my mind. For months, I had tried to let it go, to be the bigger person, to focus on rebuilding Signalbox and moving forward. And I did. I really did. But the betrayal stayed with me. It haunted me in the quiet hours of the night, when the adrenaline faded and the lights dimmed, and I was left alone with the memory of Lena standing in that driveway, smugly claiming I should thank her for hijacking my company. That moment replays in my head like a scene I wasn't supposed to be in. I was always the background character in our family story, the quiet kid, the disappointment, the one who didn't try hard enough. But this time, I had the pen. And this time, I was going to write the ending. It started with the Christmas invitation. In early November, I got a group text from Mom. Christmas dinner at home this year. Saturday the 23rd. Everyone bring something. I stared at the message for a while. Not because I was surprised. We always had Christmas at the house. But because it reminded me of last year. The humiliation. The smug comments. The smirks across the table. And then, Greg's whisper. That single moment of validation that changed everything. I texted back. I'll be there. No emojis. No pleasantries. Just enough to confirm my attendance. This wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. There would be no shouting match, no table-flipping spectacle. I wasn't going to show up with an entourage or rub my success in their faces. That wasn't the point. This was about truth. About holding up a mirror so they could see what they'd become and what they'd lost. And for that, I needed preparation. The first step? Information. I hired a private consultant, a digital forensics expert named Ava who specialized in tracing unauthorized use of intellectual property. I didn't want to just catch Lena. I wanted evidence. A trail. Something undeniable. I provided Ava with every scrap I had: emails, forwarded contracts, cache versions of the fake no-box legal site Lena created. I gave her Greg's LinkedIn, Lena's old firm name, even a list of mutual contacts. Ava got to work immediately. The second step was rebuilding my presence. See, one of the side effects of staying quiet and rebuilding in secret was that people, especially my family, assumed I'd vanished, that I'd gone underground in defeat. And I was okay with that. For a time. But now I wanted them to see. So I reached out to my network, quietly but intentionally. I gave 3 interviews to medium-sized tech publications. I didn't frame it as a comeback story. I hate that narrative. I framed it as a transformation. A pivot. Founder of NoBox launches new collaborative platform, Signalbox, built from lessons learned in the trenches. That was the headline one blog used. It felt good. Not flashy. Just true. Then, I reactivated my LinkedIn, updated my profile, posted a short piece titled, "Building Again, but Better." No drama, no shade. Just a thoughtful write-up about resilience, boundaries, and protecting your vision. It gained traction, dozens of shares. Some unexpected messages, too. Old college friends, past clients, a few investors who had brushed me off before now wanted to catch up. I ignored most of them, but the attention served its purpose. Because when Lena searched my name again, as I knew she eventually would, she'd find something very different than the quiet, invisible brother she'd dismissed last year. The third step? Gathering allies. This part wasn't about business. It was personal. Over the past few months, I'd grown close with a few of my oldest online friends, people I'd known for years but had never met in person. Creators, devs, artists. One of them, Tara, ran a YouTube channel that reviewed productivity tools. Small but dedicated audience. She'd reviewed NoBox once, early on, and helped it gain its first wave of attention. I reached out and offered her exclusive access to Signalbox's newest update. She loved it. Filmed a glowing review. Posted it a week before Christmas. I didn't promote it. I didn't ask her to tag me, but I knew Lena subscribed to that channel. I checked the viewer logs. Her IP was there. Step 4? Crafting the invitation. Mom had asked everyone to bring something for Christmas dinner. Normally, I'd bring dessert. Something easy. Store-bought. This year, I told her I'd bring something special. And I meant it. I had a box custom-made. A sleek, matte black presentation box, hand-lettered with the words, "To those who doubted me." Inside was a USB drive. A single file on it. A private video I made. No branding. No logos. Just me, on camera, calmly explaining what happened. The betrayal. The fake legal site. The client poaching. I didn't mention names. I didn't need to. I just told the story. Honestly, plainly, like a man who'd finally decided to stop staying quiet. The file name? Here's the truth. I wrapped it like a gift. Tied it with a simple red ribbon. I wasn't going to hand it out. I wasn't even sure who would open it. But I'd leave it there, on the table, and walk away. That was my final play. Let the truth do the talking. Still, I needed one more thing: insurance. Ava came through the week before Christmas. She'd found everything. Old versions of Lena's fake legal site, archived in the Wayback Machine, even after she deleted them. WHOS data linking the domain to an email under her law firm's name. IP logs showing where the emails were sent. Screenshots of contracts she had altered, timestamped, geotagged. And best of all, a recorded Zoom call between Lena and one of my former clients. She didn't know they'd recorded it, but they had. And she'd claimed, on camera, that she was now managing Tom's licensing division. She even said, "He's too busy with the back-end stuff, so we handle the business side now." It was all there. The lies, the manipulation, the fraud. I had it saved on a secure cloud link. Password protected, ready to release if things went sideways. And suddenly, I realized something. I wasn't nervous. Not at all. Because this wasn't a revenge mission anymore. This was closure. Truth. Balance. Christmas Eve came with snow. The roads were slick, the lights warm, and the house looked exactly as it always had. Clean, bright, like a postcard. I pulled up in a black rental car. Nothing flashy, just sharp enough to signal I wasn't the same guy from last year. I walked in with a smile, nodded at the familiar faces, and set the black box down beside the gifts under the tree. No one noticed. Not yet. Dinner started the usual way. Greg was there, of course, wearing a new watch. Mom made her famous casserole. Dad poured wine. Lena, dressed in something expensive, greeted me with a kiss on the cheek like nothing had ever happened. I didn't flinch. We sat. We ate. The conversation turned to careers again. Greg had just gotten a promotion. Lena was launching something big in the new year. Dad was almost retired, though he'd never admit it. Mom was proud of everyone. Then, inevitably, they turned to me. So, Tom, Greg said, smirking over his wine. What's next for the genius? I looked around the table. Familiar faces. Familiar patterns. But I wasn't the same. I'm just building, I said. Same as always. Lena laughed softly. Still chasing that dream? And I smiled. Because I knew what was waiting under the tree. Because I knew what they didn't. Because the truth has a way of finding the surface. Even if it takes a year. Even if it takes everything. And soon it would. Christmas dinner ended the way it always did. With leftover pie, polished wine glasses, and passive-aggressive tension bubbling under tight smiles. The dining room lights had dimmed to a soft gold. Outside, snow drifted lazily in the moonlight. Inside, the fireplace crackled, and the grown-up kids, me, Lena, Greg, lounged on the living room couches while Mom busied herself in the kitchen. Dad sipped his brandy, flipping through channels like he did every holiday, looking for something worth watching. And then, almost casually, Mom called out from the tree. Oh, what's this? I looked up, pretending not to know. She held the small matte black box I'd placed beside the gifts. The one with the ribbon. The one that didn't have a tag. Did someone forget to label this? She asked, holding it up. Greg peered at it. Looks fancy. Tom, is that one of yours? Lena snorted. Please. Tom doesn't wrap things. He barely shows up. I stood slowly, walked over, and took the box from Mom. Actually, I said, yeah, that's mine. Her brows lifted. Oh, for who? I paused. Let the moment hang. For everyone. Lena narrowed her eyes. What is it? I turned it over in my hands and walked to the center of the room, where the TV sat, dormant. I unplugged the Chromecast, slotted in the USB drive I'd prepared, and flicked the input over with the remote. Greg leaned forward. What is this? He asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I pressed play. The screen went black for a moment, then faded into my face, calm, seated in my studio. No background music. No fancy editing. Just my voice, recorded in a quiet moment with full composure. If you're watching this, I began, you've probably made some assumptions about me. That I'm the quiet one. The failure. The one who didn't leave home. The one with the hobby. But I think it's time you understood what actually happened this year. Lena's mouth parted slightly. Greg shifted uncomfortably. Dad looked over the rim of his glass. I continued speaking on screen, laying it out without malice, just truth. The fake no-box legal site. The unauthorized contract pitches. The false claims of representation. The manipulation of clients. The slow unraveling of my reputation because someone close to me decided my silence meant surrender. As the video rolled, the air in the room thickened. I was told I should be thankful. The version of me on screen said quietly that someone else was doing me a favor. But what was done wasn't help. It was theft. It was betrayal. It was the reason I had to rebuild everything from scratch. Lena stood up. Okay, that's enough. Turn it off. I raised the remote. Sit down. She froze. What is this, some kind of stunt? She asked, her voice rising, defensive now. You're embarrassing yourself. Greg finally spoke, his voice low. Wait, is this real? I looked at him. Very. Lena laughed nervously. Please. He's exaggerating. He's always been dramatic. I offered to help. That's all. I didn't do anything wrong. The screen cut to a recording. A Zoom call between Lena and one of my clients, full screen. The quality wasn't perfect, but the audio was clear. Tom's focusing on engineering now, Lena said smoothly in the clip. He's asked me to take point on contracts. We're streamlining subscriptions. It's all official. Greg paled. Mom gasped. Dad sat up straight. No, Lena said aloud. That's out of context. You're twisting this. I turned to her. You said I should thank you. Remember? She stepped forward. I was just trying to hijack my work. You weren't trying to help me. You were trying to own me. The screen now displayed the fake site she built. Archived pages. WHOIS records. Her law firm email linked directly to the domain. Then it faded to black. Silence. I had the right, she said suddenly, her voice sharp now. You live in that house. You used our internet. Dad co-signed your car in college. Don't act like you did this alone. Dad flinched at that. I looked at him. You co-signed a used Honda 12 years ago. I paid it off in 2. Then to Lena. And I paid rent every single month while you lived in the guest house for free after your divorce. You think that bought my company? She was breathing hard now, red in the face. You made something that got big, and we weren't supposed to just watch you walk away with all of it. Greg muttered something under his breath. What? Lena snapped. Greg stood up. You lied to me, he said quietly. You told me Tom asked you to get involved. That he needed help. I've been talking about the app at my firm, trying to push it. All based on you. You liked the app, she snapped. It's not like I made you. He shook his head. You made me look like an idiot. Then he turned to me. I'm sorry, he said. I nodded. Not your fault. She played you too. Lena looked at everyone in the room like they were the crazy ones. You're really going to believe him? He's just jealous. He's always resented me. Mom finally found her voice. Lena, we saw the video. I don't care what you saw. Lena shouted, finally cracking. I've carried this family. I'm the one who got straight A's. I'm the one who had the big wedding. I'm the one who almost destroyed your brother's company, Dad said quietly. She blinked at him. He'd never said anything like that to her. I don't even recognize you anymore, he said, standing slowly. That wasn't help. That was sabotage. Lena's voice was shaking now. I'm not the villain here. And for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. You're not the victim either. Greg stepped away from her. I'm done. She turned. What? You never told me the truth. I defended you to my friends. I vouched for you. And you used me. Greg. No, he said, grabbing his coat. I hope whatever you were chasing was worth it. He left. Lena stood in stunned silence, eyes wet but jaw clenched. And then, without another word, she turned and walked out. No goodbyes. No excuses. Just silence. The room felt hollow once she was gone. Dad sat back down heavily. Mom covered her mouth, still staring at the dark screen. I picked up the remote, turned the TV off, and walked to the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking. My breath was steady. I felt clean. A moment later, Dad stepped in. He didn't speak right away. Then, why didn't you tell us sooner? I shrugged. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer. I needed to protect it, I said. And I needed to protect myself. For once. He nodded. She'll deny it. I've got the evidence. Lawyers are standing by. I don't need your help. He exhaled. Good. We didn't hug. We didn't bond. But there was something different in the way he looked at me. Respect. Mom approached me later, more emotional. She apologized. Genuinely. Said she didn't see what was happening. That she was sorry for playing favorites. I told her I didn't need her to grovel, just to listen next time. By the time I left that night, the snow had thickened. The street was quiet. The world was still. I stepped into my car, closed the door, and looked back at the house. The lights glowed softly behind frosted windows, like the set of a play I'd finally exited for good. Lena never contacted me again. The cease and desist turned into a formal complaint. Her firm reviewed the evidence, and her name was quietly removed from their directory a few weeks later. Word got around. A few clients she'd poached returned to me with apologies. Greg, surprisingly, reached out months later. He'd changed firms. Asked if I wanted to consult for his new team. I said I'd think about it. I never went back to that house. But I didn't need to. Because I had everything I needed now. My name. My company. My peace. Some people think revenge is about destruction. About winning. But really? It's about rebuilding yourself so completely, they can't even recognize the version of you that doesn't need them anymore. And that version? He sleeps well at night.